Hi everyone, welcome to this new session of CFL Level 2 Economics. Today we'll be going over the new reading of economics, which is Economic Growth and Investment Decisions. Now this reading in its entirety is pretty theoretical, and the good thing is that most of this reading, around 80-90% of this reading, is focused on economic growth itself, as to what is economic growth and how do we analyze it, or what are the things we focus on to see if an economy is growing or not. Once we understand the concept of economic growth and what all causes economic growth, then towards the end, this chapter is giving you a very basic idea. Just about 10% of this reading is focused on how the analysis or the factors that influence economic growth, how those would be analyzed in context of our decision making process. So once we know what economic growth is, how do I incorporate that in deciding whether I should make an investment in a particular share or in a particular security, a particular bond or not? So two parts of this chapter. The major focus is economic growth itself. Now, economic growth is something that historically, and also something you might have covered at level 1, we always associate economic growth with GDP. So if a country's GDP is growing, we say that the economy is growing, and that is correct. However, for us, when we combine the fact that we are not just concerned with analyzing an economy, we also want to incorporate that analysis into investment decisions. At that point, it becomes slightly tricky to use just GDP. Because if a country's GDP is growing, but people are not getting the full benefit of that, that growth in GDP might not fully translate to a sustainable growth in demand, a sustainable growth in supply. And if that doesn't happen, then incorporating that GDP growth rate into investment decisions might not be the best idea. So, for the investment part of things, we not only focus on the economic growth. I'm not saying that GDP growth rate, economic growth rate are not important. They are. But we also look at another factor, which is the standard of living. If the standard of living of the population in any country is improving, that means that the improvement or the growth rate of the economy, it would be sustained over longer period. Because if people are having more income, they have more disposable income, they will spend more, they will buy better goods, demand levels would increase, this would incentivize the firms in the economy, supply levels would also increase. That would be a sustainable level of economic growth. So not only are we focused on just GDP growth rate, but also on standard of living. And for standard of living, we look at economic growth rate on a per capita basis. So standard of living is simply judged by GDP per capita. So GDP divided by the number of people in the country, that is how we measure the standard of living. If GDP per capita is growing, that is the growth of standard of living of people in the country. Now, there are several factors that can influence this economic growth. Let's have a look at them. So the syllabus identifies around 6 factors that are preconditions for growth, that if these things exist, then the chances of there being a growth in the economy would be higher than they would otherwise be. Keep in mind, this list is not exhaustive by any means. This does not mean that you only have these 6 factors. There can be other factors also. So right at the first, we have savings and investment. Basically, if in the economy, the people are making a lot of investments, they are saving a lot of money, that saved money would then be reinvested for further growth of the economy itself. If you save money and you invest, that money is being used by someone who would exploit some sort of opportunities, would generate a return, and that would relate to economic growth. So savings and investment, how the proportion of savings and investment is to the entire income that someone is earning. If someone earns an income and he's only saving 10%, then he has less growth potential. But if someone is saving 50-60% of his income and investing it, he has more growth potential in the longer term. So savings and investment, not just in isolation, but also, if you remember from level 1, marginal propensity to save and marginal propensity to consume. How much of the income does a person save? How much does he spend on consumption? So that is the first factor. Then financial markets. So if the stock markets, if the bond markets, these are very good. The intermediaries are functioning very well. The banking system, the insurance companies, the brokers, the dealers, all the intermediaries and the market together are working in a very transparent and smooth manner. This further enhances the first point itself, that people have more trust when they make investments. So as such, financial markets and how smooth they operate, This facilitates saving and investment. If the financial markets are not operating smoothly, even though people might want to save and invest, they will be slightly afraid of doing that because of regulations or restrictions of the financial markets. Next up, we have political and legal system and also the stability of both of these. If a country is constantly having some sort of political turmoil, there are some social movements or something else going on, it tends to cause some sort of disruption for the business, where the business is not functioning in a smooth manner. On the other side, if there is political stability and the legal system, the framework of all the laws, whether it relates to properties or acquisition of companies, foreign investments, all those, if all of those are very smooth functioning and very clearly laid out, then companies have a little more trust when they establish their business. And as such, this means that the companies would be more interested in investing in that particular economy rather than somewhere else. So stability of political and legal system matters a lot. Then we have human capital. So the people of any particular country are very important in its growth. How exactly that human capital evolves, how the economy deals with those humans, those peoples, those citizens, that is very important. This would include everything: how the people of a country are educated, the educational system, the entire academic system, and then how work experience or what exactly you learn in terms of your expertise, what are the various fields in which there is education of higher quality that is provided. For example, we start with school education that is for everyone, but then we have graduation, we have post graduation. So there is an entire structure that operates to make sure that the people of the country are well educated, they are of very high quality in terms of their productivity. That will be very important to the economic growth. So if the education system of a country is not up to the mark, then the people will also not be as skilled as people in other countries would be. So as such, human capital refers to those elements. And then you have tax systems. Of course, this is directly related to the factor of disposable income. The amount of income you earn, you pay tax from it. Whatever is left, that is disposable income. So if the tax systems are relatively going smooth, they are stable, they are sustainable, this gives people an incentive that, okay, this is the amount of income I will normally have. And accordingly, they would plan their investments, they would plan their consumption. If the taxes are low, then the companies would also be willing to invest. Foreign companies would come in because they would have less tax burden. A lot of companies would increase their investments because profits are not being taxed highly. So a lot of investment would flow into the company, and more investments always translates to more growth. Lastly, we have trade restrictions. If a country operates in isolation, no connection with outside world, that country's growth potential is going to be limited by their own technology, by their own human capital, and by their own capital investment. However, when a country has a lot of trade flows, it is trading, it is allowing capital to flow in from outside as well. This creates a situation where the human capital would also evolve, because people within a country, they will learn from a lot of educational techniques or maybe technological advancements from outside countries. Each country has certain sets of specialities. For example, if I just take example of, let's say, cars, probably all of us would agree, at least most of us would agree, that Germany has had the best car makers in a very long time. Similarly, for a lot of other products, for technology related products, China has the best production capacities. As such, different countries have their own specializations, and when we have free trade flow and free capital flows, this advancement of one country is accessible to others also. This flows through the countries and it enhances the growth potential, because if one country is operating just in isolation, its growth is just related to its internal factors, its internal resources. If those resources are fully exploited, no further growth is possible. So having less trade restrictions is normally better for the economic growth. Keep in mind, less trade restrictions doesn't mean that you just allow 100% free flow of capital and trade. There would be restrictions, but not of the kind which prohibit proper business. So I hope these are clear. Some preconditions for growth. Let's have a look at a very important factor, a very important equation that we have, which is the Cobb-Douglas function. Now, in order to understand economic growth slightly better, we first have to understand a basic equation, which is called the Cobb-Douglas function. Now, in real world, Economies are a mixture of complex number of variables. However, the equation we have with us is a very simplistic approach which says, so I'll just write the heading, Cobb-Douglas function. And the equation says that output of any country, any economy, output would be related to GDP. In case you want a simple approach, by can simply denote GDP. So the Cobb-Douglas function says that output of any country is dependent on three things: technology, capital, and labor. So he says that the function of output, so if I want to look at the output or the capacity or the GDP of any country, that is judged by three things. Of course, in the real world, there can be more than these three things, but this is a more simplistic approach. So three things: technology, how fast the technology of a country is growing, how much capital do they have invested, and how much labor do they have. However, they also added a factor here. So effectively what this equation now says is T represents technology, K represents capital, L represents labor. This alpha represents the portion of total output which is influenced by capital. So effectively what this equation now says is that if a country has a lot of capital, their GDP would be dependent on how much capital investment they have. So if this alpha would be some value between 0 and 1, some value over here. If it is close to 1, it would mean that the economy is pretty capital intensive. They are not focused on human based output, they are focused on machine based output. Capital and investments are key. For that country, K becomes a relevant factor. However, if a country has very low dependency on the capital, this value would be very close to 0, in which case labor would become a bigger factor. So while this function says that yes, there are three factors, this function also says that capital and labor will have a bit of a balance depending upon how dominant they are in the economy. If an economy is labor intensive, for them the capital would not be a relevant factor in deciding the output because the value of alpha will be very close to 0. In that case, labor would become the bigger element. So as such, outright, this function not only gives us three factors, but also creates a link between capital and labor. So Cobb-Douglas function introduces three elements. Now, in a general study of economics, we also add a fourth element, which is not going to be part of this equation, but which is for our understanding that in general, for economic output or economic growth, technology is important, capital is important. This is physical capital, this is human capital. Aside from this, infrastructure is also very important. And the best example I can give you to understand the importance of infrastructure is that imagine this entire pandemic that we've been going through for a little over a year now. Imagine this without telecommunications, without internet. Internet is something that we believe to be technological advancement, but the entire network of telecommunications in any country is part of infrastructure. So you won't be seeing these classes, I won't be making these classes, and you won't be seeing Netflix or anything else if the infrastructure did not exist. So while there would be companies, without infrastructure, those companies would not be enabled. So infrastructure is the fourth element that in a simple sort of analysis of any economy, we take infrastructure to be the fourth element aside from these three. However, keep in mind, for the Cobb-Douglas function, infrastructure is not included. That was just for your general understanding, because in your syllabus at one point they have mentioned four factors also. So I wanted to cover it here itself. Now outright we have three factors. Let's discuss them in a little more detail.